my goal is not to win hours. I don't want to be like at the leaderboard of hours. That's not what I want. I want to be like present.
What does it really take to become successful as a writer or artist? There are a lot of destructive myths out there about what a creative career is supposed to look like. We're told we shouldn't care about worldly success or money. We're told that if we're good enough, everything would magically fall into place. That's a lie, and it keeps us struggling, baffled, and hungry for any shred of information that might shed light on how to keep making the work we love. That's why get any two artists or writers, or any creatives really, together in a room, and it's a foregone conclusion that the conversation will turn to money and the nitty-gritty reality of being a professional creative. I'm cartoonist and creative business coach Jessica Abel. In my own life, those studio visit back-channel conversations with other artists where we share our insights and hacks, anxieties and red flags have been critical to any success I've achieved. And now I'm bringing that conversation to you. This is The Autonomous Creative. Hey, it's Jessica. This is just a quick note before we start. This is a slightly different episode than we normally have. This is a recording of a roundtable conversation that I had with two longtime Creative Focus Workshop alumni, screenwriter turned novelist Shelley Evans and writer educator Matt Griffin. We did this in January of 2025. And we're sharing it now just ahead of our new Creative Focus Workshop cohort opening up in mid-October, because Matt and Shelley are so articulate about the struggle of developing a self-sustaining, self-nourishing creative practice. And I really wish every serious creative could hear this, how leaving crisis mode, toxic productivity culture behind, what does that look like? Why the challenge of choosing one project among all your projects to focus on at a time is worth facing and pays off. And also what marking project progress with the marbles in a jar technique looks like in real life and why it's so effective. So if you really feel like you've been through the ringer, but you still care deeply about your work and you do want this kind of self-maintaining and really feeding yourself with your creative practice, you are in the right place. And if you want a simple step afterward, I am doing the creative engine training that we talk about in the conversation on October 9th, 2025. And you are invited. If you are here after October 29th, that's also fine. I will link to the replay in the notes. I will link to either the registration for the live thing or to the replay. And either way, I hope I will see you there. All right, let's get to it. So let me introduce my guests. Shelley and Matt are both alumni who've been in the group for at least a year longer. Usually, I think with both of you, it's been at least a couple of years. Shelley has written teleplays for ABC, CBS, Showtime, Hallmark, USA Network, and Lifetime Television, and teaches dramatic writing and story development at the Harvard Extension School. And Shelley is working on a novel and has been working on that very steadily for the last couple of years, and stepped away from screenwriting as an active practice, correct? Yeah. Matt Griffin is a writer, adjunct professor, conference producer, consultant, 3D printing and biofabrication expert, and the father of this infant right here, based in Brooklyn, New York. He teaches at the NYU IDM and ITP programs, chairs Narrascope 2025 Narrative Games Conference, which is at Drexel in Philly in June 2025. I see a meetup coming up. And is writing an interactive novel for Choice of Games. And thanks to the Creative Folks Workshop and the ACC, he knows that hyphenated roles and multi-passionate careers don't mean multitasking. It means clear intentional goals and one achievable milestone at a time, which has been a challenge for you. You have a lot of things you want to do. So that's been really, it's been a really interesting and cool journey going through that with you, trying to negotiate all those things. So I'm going to ask each of you a couple questions. Feel free to go off script, just answer, say whatever you want to say. That's totally fine. But I'm just going to kind of lead you through a few questions that I think might be illuminating for the people who are here. So first of all, Shelley, let's start with you. What was going on in your life that you decided to join the Creative Focus Workshop in the first place?
Well, so So I think what I would say is I had a long career in the entertainment industry in Hollywood that was both incredibly satisfying. I love film and also very draining. I had an interesting moment when around the time that my kids were heading off to college, where I have a long, pretty stable and happy marriage, and had often walked around feeling kind of smug about the fact that I had this well functioning marriage. And then one day I had this kind of like realization that that my dysfunctional marriage was to my career. Um, and that it was as abusive as an alcoholic spouse. You know, it was like, I mean, the entertainment industry, anyone who's ever been in it knows, is like just full of dysfunction. And so I was constantly working under punishing deadlines, like powerful, overwhelming rewards, confusing messages, like just and it worked really well for me. Like until it sort of stopped working well for me. You know, like I never, I was exhausted. I was very burned out. And at some point I discovered that I'd been working in the industry long enough that I had a pension.
Mm.
And I was like, wait, what? Like, there's a union. Oh my God. Like, I literally didn't even know, speaking of dysfunctional marriages, right? Like, I didn't even know that I had a pension. I was just kind of like, you mean I get to retire? And it took me some years to wrap my head around that. I mean, like 5 years. And the more I sat with it, the more I thought, okay, you could keep doing this thing that makes you feel exhausted, burned out, and despairing about the world, or you could try something different. I did finally say, I'm just going to take a pause and try to write this novel. And pretty quickly discovered that all my habits no longer worked because I couldn't be the alcoholic spouse to myself. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't like scream at myself and get myself to do things. And I mean, it was just clear that this very dysfunctional machine that I had working wasn't working for me.
Although you tried.
I tried. Oh my God, I tried. And in the middle of failing, I was on a Substack, and I think it was Austin Kleon's Substack. But you get talked about also on Mason Curry's Substack. I read a lot of kind of creative process Substacks. And someone talking about creative process said, I do the Jessica Abel 360 thing. And I was like, what is the Jessica Abel 360 thing? And then they said basically like I was all messed up until I started doing the Jessica Abel 360 thing. So then I immediately Googled Jessica Abel 360 thing, came to your Creative Engine talk, thought I'm too good for this. Like I'm an artist. I need to do this all on my own. Like it's not going to work for me. Like I don't sign up for things. I don't, whatever nonsense I had going in my head. And honestly, just for anyone who's trying to market themselves, you sent me an email, Jessica. Like, so I was like, forget it. She told me, I totally agree with everything you said. I'm not a joiner. I haven't taken a class in 30 years. I'm not going to take a class. And I got an email from you, a follow-up email for you. I was about to hit delete, and you held up a little card that said, hi, Shelley, like in your hand. It was like a video. And you said, I noticed that you came to the workshop and didn't sign up. And I just want to give it one more pitch. And I was so shocked. I was so shocked that like a real human being was there in my inbox that I signed up. I was like, okay, God, okay, I'm listening. Like whatever nonsense was going on in my head.
I think you might have been the only person who actually responded to those videos I sent out for like 3 months. But hey,
it was me. It worked for me. You busted through whatever kind of denial I had. And the rest is history. So I've been doing it for about 2 years, 2+ years, almost in September, it'll be 3 years. Yeah.
Awesome. Love it. Very cool.
Well, my answer to this question is, I mean, there's a lot of similarities. First of all, that was amazingly articulated. I really enjoyed that, and I felt a lot of like familiarity with that. So, uh, before I joined, I used to be a film producer. I was a film producer and post soup for a decade, and then I thought, oh, you know what's uh, to try next will be, give me more time to do my creative work. Why don't I go into startup tech? This was not a great idea, but it is an exciting ride. So I've been involved with desktop 3D printing from basically its beginning. I was part of the original team at MakerBot and when I did all these things. But I took that gig. I mean, going from a filmmaker to working in robotics, because I wanted the gear to do this animation project. Because I'd done a lot of like technical facilitating stuff with artists, and I did like a silhouette film with the artist Kara Walker, and it was an amazing experience. And I wanted to do more, so I wanted to build a rig. And to get the rig, you had to go and intern at the not yet business that was making these 3D printers. Anyway, so I always thought, okay, I'll do this thing, which is all, by the way, really interesting, and I will get to my creative work. I never made that animated project, and I was working 100-hour, 120-hour weeks sometimes for years, and always thinking if I could just configure things right. And so one of the reasons I was attracted to this, to Jessica Abel's piece, is that I think I become addicted to all the like productivity schemes, and there's a way in which when you get the idea, you're like, oh, this idea sounds great. I bet this is gonna allow me to you know fully optimize and everything, and I'm gonna get everything in. I'm gonna keep this gig, within 3D printing, and also finish this in this case this interactive novel I was working on, and but so many of those schemes, it's like I loved the new ideas of new ways to try to solve how to kind of arrange your productivity. So I've tried them all, and I just liked that. But what I didn't recognize the mechanism, and what the Creative Focus Workshop had was that it was battle tested and it was evolving, and it was not for once it wasn't well, if it's not working for you, you need to like more purely do it a different way. And if you really were committed, then it would work perfectly. In fact, that's not true. And so things with this project, they start with an expectation that you live in your life, and so your life should be included in this. I was like, that sounds great. I'm gonna live in life and hyper optimize it. So I think I'm actually a good person to have in for Q&A on this, because I jumped in Creative Focus Workshop in what, 2021? It was like pretty early, and I still had this tech gig that I loved slash is kind of like the finger trap. I was like, it was so exciting, but it was incredibly destructive in a very specific way that I didn't realize because I wasn't doing any of those stages of evaluating and going forward with intention. Instead, I was reacting to crises all the time. And I love that. You can throw a crazy project. This is why I'm the kind of like this is true in my film days too. I was like the line producer. You throw into like a dangerous project. Great. I love it. I'm going to stay up all night. I'm going to like sneak into the planning office to get that form and change it. I don't know, whatever I need to do. But that's not really charting a path for what you want to do. So as creative projects, I always was able to find an excuse not to do them. And initially when I jumped in for Creative Focus Workshop, I started going through and loved the process. I will say it did, check all the boxes for like my addiction to productivity stuff. But there was so much room for really kind of reflecting on what I done and my approaches and trying to kind of like relocate what was impinging on my process. But I still didn't listen to a central thing that honestly, Jessica, you were very clear about whenever I sort of interacted with the group. You're like, it sounds like you're still trying to do more than one thing because you have identified that you have no time because of this impossible 100-hour week job. And then you're like carving up your sleep to like, shove in this other thing. So it actually took, like, I learned a lot. I probably, you know, got some advantage in the tech job, benefiting from this. And I did start making progress in my own creative projects, but it was really like a second cycle through. This is why it was really valuable to me, even if it took me a little while to recognize, uh, you know, I knew to like that I liked it because it was so battle tested, and yet I still doubted the clear things that were included. The warning saying, "Hey, you might be doing this, and you might want to be, you might want to rethink this." I'm like, "Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm not going to do that, but because I could probably do this." So it took me sort of recognizing, wait a minute, I'm actually done with 3D printing. So I was a MakerBot that sort of started desktop 3D printing, later worked for Ultimaker. And then suddenly one night, Ultimaker merged with MakerBot. And I was sitting there with all the institutional knowledge of both companies. I'm like, wait, why am I in this field for 15 years? And so, and meanwhile, my wife who's a writer like me, but not getting sucked into robotics, um, published story after story. Hillary liked her. She's published Temporary and Terror Story, and I saw her just do what it takes to keep building what she wanted to do, so that now even her teaching is like not as valuable as her protecting that time to write. I'm like, she's arrived at where I wanted to go, and I've been allowed myself to just stay in this reactive place. So anyway, so that it's a long answer, but it probably contains uh, why specifically creative focus workshop is so useful. It's so battle tested. It it accommodates you cycling through and improving things because it's pragmatic. It's built from how you you know the driver becomes, as you let go of some things that you really don't want to have as your top priority, you can go further towards your actual goal, instead of some, weird promise that's separate from that. Like improving the outcomes is the driver, not like some fairy dust. And so, yeah, I continue to cycle through, and and so now I'm making good progress with my interactive novel, and doing consulting and 3D printing, but mostly teaching, and I'm so much happier. So
That's the best result of all. It's so much happier and have room to have a baby, which
yes,
like that.
yes.
Imagine trying to take care of that child, 3 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing I think that with both of you, and Matt, you were in the group for a while in 2021 or so, and then I saw you various things, but you were out for a while, and then you came back in as I was rewriting the course. Shelley, you've been in through this whole reimagining process. And with both of you, different issues, different things going on, but like I've had, and I mean this in the kindest possible way, like the same conversation, like over and over and over again. Um, and that I think is the value of being in a group and coming, like showing up at the coaching calls and whatever, is that, you know, I'm always saying stuff you've already heard. And even in some cases, like the materialist stuff, like Matt, all the productivity stuff, chapter and verse. Some of the stuff that I put out there, less now than before, is the same thing. It's not new because some of it's just useful. Um, I think that's less true now than it used to be. But it's y- you have to hear it different ways and you have to test it in your own life. And even the beginning of this year, Matt, you were trying to get by with writing like 3 novels at the same time, was it? Something like that. It was like, I'm gonna
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, I celebrated the success of, you know, get telescoping everything down to that one single project and making progress by saying, "This is great. I should do 2 projects," which you shouldn't. No, I came back for that. But
Yeah.
I came back I went, because I went back and redid some of the sections and some of your quarterly review stuff in particular, like some of the optimization, like your improvements and iterations over time, uh, being mindful of how it's actually impacted those taking the course, meant that like the messages were there. Like I'm sure if I go back to, 2021 and I read, one of the sheets of one of the sections, in there is the thing that I found so exciting when finally it was like really, it was bulleted and really simple and some of these in the layers of refresh. But I was able to let go of wanting to kind of hold on to too much. That's why my bio is intentionally like it should sound like way too much. It's almost incoherent in the range of things. But switching an approach to that to saying, look, I'm interested in these things, but isn't it, instead of living in crisis state all the time and only where you don't really get to direct things at all, if you, really, really take these approaches seriously, you'll see some real progress. Um, and you'll have a little bit of mental space outside of that single thing you're working on that is much more powerful than any sort of crazy multitasking approach to it, where you really that creative ability to move and change and respond to a project just flattens when you like give yourself like, oh, it's great, I have 6 hours this day I could do something, so I'm going to fill 6 hours of it with like 4 projects. It's yeah, I'm finally off of that.
If you don't know what is inside the Creative Focus Workshop, one of the core tenets is those of you who've gone through the Creative Engine workshop, there's the 4 phases of the Creative Engine. And in the collect phase, that's when you're really thinking about your capacity and you're thinking about your criteria for what's important to you, as well as what the options are for what you're going to do. And then in the decide phase, you decide what are you going to focus on. And for a lot of people coming into the Creative Focus Workshop, I would say a vast majority of people, there are far too many options. And there's this kind of bargaining with yourself to try to do all the things to keep them all on the list. And I'm always trying to walk a line as a leader saying, like, I'm not saying you need to delete these things and never do them. I'm not saying they're not important to you. I'm not saying you don't deserve to have, lots of different interests. But the way that you're able to, like Matt saying, fully engage with something and get the most out of it and also move your career forward quickly is by focusing on something, finishing it, getting it out the door. And when you do that, you grow as an artist, as a human, as a creative, and also your ability, and I was saying this with, I was talking to Rotten at the very beginning about this idea of growing a career. It's like creative work is communication. It's a form of communication. And so when you create something and you get it out to other people, that's when that communication happens. And that then causes all kinds of interesting ripple effects in your work and in your career. And so all of those reasons are why I mean, I insist in some sense that one project at a time is the best way to go. Now, we're humans. We're not literally doing only one thing at a time. But we're the more the sort of that whatever amount of free space you have in your brain for projects, meaning things that are like unknown endpoint, you haven't figured them all out yet, those things that you narrow that down to one thing at a time. And then you're obviously maintaining many other things in your life and continuing to, support stuff you've already done. And some of that stuff might need to be trimmed down too. But there's a distinction there that's not like your life ends and you only do one thing ever and that's the end. So I just want to say that because just contextually it's important here. Shelley, I wanted to shift to you because Matt's, I think, biggest insight here was the one project thing. It's really like, and the ongoing difficulty of choosing. For you, that wasn't so much the thing because you were already like, this is my novel, this is what I'm working on. Your biggest insight and the thing that you've needed to come back to learn over and over again is the idea of practice as opposed to deadlines. The creating a creative practice, even with a project that has an arc and has an end point. At some point, this novel will be done. And like, how do you, coming from the world of incredibly intense and punishing deadlines that you came from, move into a world where you are guiding yourself through this project and you continue to make regular progress without anybody breathing down your neck, including your inner critic, because that's been the biggest thing for you.
I was thinking about this as I was doing my sort of year-end review. I mean, I sort of feel like Matt, I was kind of a productivity hacker, which is probably people who are productivity hackers find their way to you in some way. Like, well, maybe now this will be the hack that finally fixes it. And in fact, it is, right? Like, so fantastic. Yeah. And I try to sell this sometimes to people who are more like my son is a musician. He's a little flaky and he has ADHD and he just can't hear it because it's right now he's too much in that cloudy space. So I have things in place. When I was doing my year-end review, I was thinking how different my relationship is to those things than before. How before I had it, and so partly what I feel like is I've been doing this this is my third year of the year-end review. And I feel like each time I get wiser about what I'm actually reviewing. So last June, I had this so I have a way, I've been keeping track of my work hours for 25 years. And I have logs going all the way back 25 years. I'm like Trollope, I just have logs and logs and logs of how much time I've spent working. And somewhere in the middle of June, I thought, holy God, the way I'm approaching this is not supporting my core values at all. Like through one of the core values exercises that I did with you, I understood that my value, what I'm really trying to get to away from what I was doing before, is an engaged creative practice. That's what I want. And I was playing the game as if I was going to be submitting my timesheets to somebody in accounting. And so that it was only about the hours and not the quality of the hours. So there was something subtle that happened, and it really takes time to change your brain. Like, I feel like I was listening to Matt talk and I'm like, oh my God, like you hear it and you hear it and you hear it, but like that you have this really important idea that you talk about with long projects, development markers and success markers. I don't know if that's still in the system, but I feel like this idea that there are certain things that you need to do every day to contribute to your creative work. You can't really, you just have to commit to doing those things. And then at the end of the day, look and see how it went. And at one point when we were having a discussion where I was so I would do this thing where I was like, all you have to do, Shelley, is show up for writing. And you talked about it as think of it as marbles in a jar. Like I put my 4 marbles in the jar. That's the only thing I have to be responsible for. For each marble is an hour, say. I would put the marbles in a jar and then I would be like, you didn't write any pages. These pages suck. All you did was stick your finger up your nose and not know what the outline is. Like, how can you, what is wrong with you? And then I would come. So one way I have changed the way this works is I come every month that I can to the check-ins, because I feel like it's like a spiritual practice to raise my hand and say, I hate myself. Like somehow because then there's you and you go, yeah, you always hate yourself. Stop doing that. And somehow it's another voice in there that's not me. But what I realized this year is oh, my core value isn't. I've said this in a post in the in the in the feed, whatever we call it now. I said, my goal is not to win hours. I don't want to be like at the leaderboard of hours. Like, that's not what I want. I want to be like present. And that was like a mind shift. Like, it doesn't matter if I have 10,000 marbles in the jar, if the whole time I'm sitting in my office, I'm furious at myself, or I'm not doing anything really, because all I'm doing is watching the clock and thinking another hour, another hour, another hour. Like there's like these really subtle head shifts that happen. And so some of the practices haven't changed. I'm sort of keeping track of my hours, but I'm like turning my attention to why. What's my goal? Like, and it has begun, but it's a long, slow process. Like my brain just wants to snap back into the place of this isn't fast enough. This isn't good enough. This isn't fast enough. This isn't good enough. And then I have to I have a list. Like when you said development markers, I actually have this list of like 17 or 18 things that I can do in my office that count as marbles. They are not cleaning my office, cleaning the fork drawer, like buying a better computer, but they do include things like the emergency ripcord is CFW. So yesterday, I'm having a hard time getting back into the swing of things for a variety of reasons. I listened for an hour and a half to you do the creative engine workshop that you did, the 4 things that you did on the 9th that I couldn't get to. While listening to that, I realized, oh my gosh, at my end of year review, I kind of skipped the collect phase. I went straight from reflect to decide. And I didn't spend any time thinking about my criteria or my commitments or my capacity. And I was kind of like, huh. So this morning I sat down, and as I kind of went back to what am I trying to do this year? And that collect phase brings me to the why, which then makes me realize, okay. It's not about the number of hours. It's about how. It's about how you come to those hours and creating space for, I call them my story elves, like the shoemaker and his elves. Like, where do those imaginative voices, when do they feel like they can step into the space? And it's usually not when the energy is up here and everybody's screaming at me. I don't know if that answers the question, but
It answers so many questions and brings up so many others, and I love it. I will be absolutely fascinated if at some point in the next like 8 months, say, you quit tracking your hours. Like, that's your next level, is like, just show up, don't track time at all. Like, that would be fascinating. Yeah, I don't remember. I don't think I talk about development markers in the exact same way, but we talk about like what are the criteria for success and so on. So, and I love having like that list of like what counts. I think that's super important. Like, what does success look like for this action? And we talk about this idea of quota tasks, which is your marbles. So a period of time that you invest in something with an open-ended expectation of like, I'm just going to be here. I'm going to spend this time, you know, and I know if I keep showing up that my story elves will join me. And if I don't, they won't. So let's just show up. One of my favorite coaching meetings from last year was the one in the beginning of the summer when you were in London. And so Shelley's husband was on a sabbatical, and you were in London with him 3 or 4 times over the course of a number of months for weeks at a time. And also, one of your children was getting married, correct? Right. So, both amazing things to happen in a person's life. I mean, like, what a joy, both things. And Shelley was like freaking out. Like, what is happening? I'm in London and I can't write and my schedule is falling apart and I'm not getting anything done. And I was like, Shelley, my instruction to you is to go do something in London every single day and forget about writing for at least, a week, if not the entire trip. And I think you kind of did, right? Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like you lose when you get productivity. Like, I hate the word productivity. I hate the concept of productivity. I'm teaching productivity in a sense, but like not really because productivity, like both of my guests here have defined this very clearly, which is like, how much junk can I fit into a chunk of time? How much stuff can I do in this amount of time? How can I organize my time so I can fit more junk in? I just got a really interesting DM from one of our new members who was like, she said that she had tried Motion AI to organize her schedule. She was like, things are kind of falling apart for me. I need to do something. So she tried Motion, which apparently is a thing where it takes your calendar and it like suggests a calendar. And she put in all the stuff that she wanted to do in the month. And it put stuff in the middle of the night. It told her she couldn't have lunch till April. Like it's, literally. So like that's if there's never been a clearer, better picture to me of like how productivity fails when critical faculties succeed and you look at these things and you say like, I literally do not have enough time in my life to do all the things I say I want to do. So what's actually important? What do I actually want to finish? What is really important? And so when you find yourself in London for weeks at a time with nothing to do, for God's sake, like enjoy London. Like that's the job. When your child is getting married, enjoy this process. Hopefully it only ever happens once, you know? So this is what we need to be doing with our lives. And that goes for creative work too. Like if, Matt, if like, with your novel, it's like your novel was not happening, not happening, not happening. You see your wife getting her work done. What is her creative life for but that work? And if we keep putting it at the end of all of these, barriers, well, once I get this done, well, once I finish that, well, once I blah, 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 I can earn my time by finishing X, Y, and Z. All of those things are ways to just like basically never have it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I specifically got really caught well in a kind of productivity mindset. I was preparing to write this thing, researching. It's in a scripting language that was a new experience for me. So I was learning the scripting language, and I was, doing beta testing on some published work to see how it worked. See all these things, but but that is like this. I turned it to tasks. I didn't turn it into a creative practice, and it took a little bit. I think I was so addicted to external you know, deadlines and urgencies really driving things, because like, I was like, well, I accomplished so much in 3D printing by doing this, but again, it wasn't like a charted path. It was, uh, I went to that field to get a tool to use it for a different field. Instead, I got really good at the field of the tool instead of using the tool. Anyway, that, but you know, I'm hearing a lot of stuff in this that, in Shelley's story and in this discussion, it just reminds me that, um, like finding ways to back out of those mechanisms that I didn't know I was sort of trapped in, um, by having a kind of a process you can keep, working through. And, every time, I mean, the creative engine is what I'm referring to at this point. Not doing the whole courses, though I did do the course a couple of times. But the creative engine, you know, different elements of it will be useful to you at different times through, and kind of help you hopefully keep seeing like, oh, uh, I'm making a choice to do this. I really care about this. And so this thing will come into being. And so it was actually a big journey to see how much sort of busy work I was doing on my interactive novel while Hillary uh, published one and then dreamed up the second one and published that. And I'm still, I have a I did some world building and all those things. I know you're not supposed to just spend all your time doing that, but it was to avoid that. I was nervous about doing the writing, and uh, but understanding I'm committed to use that time and what time I'm putting, like what purpose I'm putting that time, uh, has kicked it over where it's now very satisfying. And so I loved hearing Shelley's focus on shifting to practice. Because I think that's really essentially what happened here. For me, though, also, a lot of like removing of excess furniture and that wasn't needed to be there.
Yeah, there's definitely both that goes into it. But I
Yeah.
do think that the end result for like my goal for everybody is that that they establish a self-maintaining creative practice of some kind. Whether that's working on things for their business or it's working on things that are personal or both or whatever. It's like that's not really what's relevant. What's relevant is that it's something that you don't have to, it's not about enforcement. It's about like returning to this and trusting yourself that you will return to it. But the one thing I wanted to ask, because I know it comes up a lot for people, is um, creating time to engage with the course and with the coaching in the Creative Focus Workshop. It's kind of tactical, but I think it's really important because a lot of people feel like, well, I've joined other things and I haven't done them. And this is it's a self-guided course, right? So it's not something where I'm sitting there and having class period with you. Um, and so, and that and feeling like you're behind or backsliding. I know both of those things have come up for both of you. So if you have any thoughts about that, I'd love to hear those.
I mean, I would say for me, the thing that uh, has been most helpful to me, first of all, was to make a commitment when I started, and it was easy for me to do because I was in trouble when I first started in 2021. To make a commitment to do the work of the course once through, and I think I set a week per module. At the time it was 12, and it just felt like that's how I'm going to do it. There was a way to go fast, and I said I'm not going to go fast because that's what I've already been doing and it's not working for me. So I'm going to do it all once. And then last summer you had a weekly, when you were getting it ramped up again, and it happened to be that I was in trouble again for a different reason because we were in London. And so I made a commitment to go through it then. That was sort of I do think it really helps to go through the whole thing, but at a pace that you can manage. So like, I feel like if you make a decision before you start, I'm going to do one a month and I'm going to do it for a year. Fine. Like for me, it just felt like I had to do it a little closer, but it was something where I could make it so that I did it once a week. That was something I was doing. Then I had that framework. And then for me, sort of making a decision about how I felt best checking in. And for me, that was putting those monthly meetings on the calendar. And then eventually, because in this new format, we had this sort of accountability meeting where we could kind of come in and make sure we were doing our weekly hours, which I was already doing sort of on my own because I'm an hours addict, as you pointed out. So I feel like just to me, I guess the operating ideas were picking my commitment and sticking to it. And one way that I've helped myself stick to it is by being very clear that this counts. So if I'm looking for those marbles and I'm addicted to my little marbles and I haven't gotten rid of my marbles.
It's fine. It's fine.
No. I mean, I'm aware, like literally when you said you're not going to count your hours, I was like, no. But I feel like I know I get a marble for it. That's what a baby I am. And so I'm like, okay, that's easy enough. It's a lot easier than writing my novel. So I'm going to just go and give myself a marble for that hour. And it helps me.
Yeah. And I think that's great. And I do not want to undercut your commitment to hours and marbles. And because for everybody here, one of the things I talk about a lot, if people are like, how do I get something done? I'm like, make a star chart, stick a star chart on the wall and give yourself gold stars. Like do it like a 3-year-old. It works for reasons. I used to do this with my college students. I would have a big board on the wall and they'd put their tasks up. And when they finished things, I would give them like unicorn stickers and things. And they'd be like, they'd want to pick their stickers out and stuff. Now, it's real. So go with what works. Like Matt was saying, it's practical. I'm practical. Like use what works for sure. And one of the things I want to mention is we do have podcast versions of the lessons and of the coaching calls. And for people who are really struggling to like sit down at the desk and like look at the thing, just listening through it, just listening through the whole course doesn't do the course for you, but it does get you probably half the way there. It gets it in your head. It gets you understand the concepts and the structure.
So in the spirit of that, so there was a discussion about pace, today in the ACC, and I shared back some insights. So I'm somebody who got really well because it's the ideas are so interesting from that scratching the itch of productivity tool, walkery. I loved these sort of activities to do, so I wanted to do all of them. But you'll notice as you're reading through, it's Jessica saying, "Don't do that." Like, hey, these things are extra if you have time, but probably you just want to do this and keep going. Well, it took me a little bit to realize that that's the momentum forward that really is more valuable and getting that at least for me that I needed to get out of this sense that I require this external thing to drive me engaging in this work. That this actually did like the tracker is in a weird way you self-motivating because you're no longer like somebody saying you have to turn this in or something catches fire and explodes. That's a bad choice for today, but like you don't have to choose anything because it's like there's a clear thing to do, and so you haven't sort of sorted through the intentionality. It also means you're not engaging in a practice where you're like recognizing what you're doing. Well, okay. Before I go, I don't need to go into all that, but the key pacing thing is that I found that by following the more pragmatic suggestions to kind of like race through and put right amount of time and try to fight my eagerness, like, oh, great, I can reflect on this. Oh, I'm going to journal for like 3 hours on this topic because it's really interesting. And to realize, well, I need this much. I need to touch this class, this session, and then I go to the next one. Because there's kind of a compositional learning that comes from going through this. And so every time you're going through this, either the creative engine itself or, looking through, kind of taking the time to look at all the modules and kind of skill up yourself, you get a little bit of the high level thinking as well as your questions changing because the questions are no longer like, oh, that seems like a good idea. Because that idea is good, I must have solved productivity, which is what that addiction is. Instead, it's like, oh, I have an actual new question. It's because I've been writing every day this week, and I'm hitting this. This is a challenge that's come up because I'm operationally executing the way I want to. And so then a lot of the course kind of reopens itself for you. And so I had to stop myself from making elaborate plans for like racing through it because that was like an attachment to it's like sense of purity. Like, oh, if I do it right, I'm gonna be perfect at creative focus workshop. But instead, it's like these are tools, and these are kind of like ammunition for doing this work. But you use it to do the work, and then you have a better sense of what you need. And so I am starting to see that as have stopped fighting the system as much and find ways to use some of the advice in its context, that some of it starts to fall away, and I'm just doing my thing, and it's no longer I'm on this plan, at the end of this plan being this class that I have here, that I will have mastered art making. It's more I return to it to kind of renew and refocus because I'm actually doing this stuff now, which is a very, very different and more exciting place to be. Um,
Yeah. Thank you for that. That was really eloquently put. I think that's the thing for me, is that that's why I say just listening to it on the podcast is fine. That, once you go all the way through it and you like, as I was rewriting this whole thing, I was able to integrate so many things that the first time through, I wasn't like, it was much more atomized. And then as I rewrote it, I was able to kind of close the circle. We do a lot of circling. And the iteration and sort of leveling up each time, what I realized is that, I'm writing about the prep work lesson in practically the last lesson of the course and going, look, you started this here and you're doing it again here. There's all of these different iterations that you go through. And that's why I've set all these fairly tight time limitations on doing the exercise. I'm like, do this in 10 minutes. And just today, one of the new students was asking, well, how long should I really spend on this? And I'm like, 10 minutes. Like, you really should just spend 10 minutes on it, because once you do 2 or 3 more lessons, you're going to have all kinds of new insight on why, what you're missing, or different, new angle on this. You're going to have different calls to action to actually redo this lesson specifically later in the course, because you will know so much more once you are, as Matt said, once you're in action and once you're doing the thing. Um, and so I guess this is it's a good balance again. So where Shelley's saying, like, you have the commitment to do the thing and set a pace. So maybe you have like an hour a week, or an hour every 2 or 3 days, depending on how fast you want to do it, where you're like, I'm just going to spend that hour working on the next things. And again, in the spirit of the Creative Focus Workshop, not I'm going to finish XYZ, but I'm just going to work forward for that amount of time. And then you'll get through the material, and you'll get through it pretty quickly. And then you have an opportunity to go back through it again, or to do deeper dives, or to put it aside and just do your thing for a while and see when it comes up again. And all of those things can kind of come back in that way. Um, so I think that basically gets us through what we need to get through. I see people appreciating you, Matt and Shelley. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you, everybody who has spent the time with us. I really appreciate that. You guys are just so thoughtful and such great participants in the whole workshop. So I'm really, really happy you're there. Okay, so Penelope has a question. What if the issue is not so much getting work done, but in sharing it out and publishing? I'm going to take that one first, but if you guys have something to say, feel free. Um, it's a project. I mean, you know, um, getting your work out in public is a project. It has stages to it. It has, steps. It has different things that you need to take on and that you need to do. And so working with using the creative focus workshop for that, you would be looking at that as something in balance with and in competition with other projects you might be doing. So you need to make sure you have time for it. You need to make sure that you put it into your schedule, and that it's something that you're committed to, and that you build habits around it. You build a structure for it. And then the questions, the creative engine will give you a guide to like how to actually do the project, where the collect phase is going to be about, well, how do you want to share it? Who needs to see it? What's the content of it? What are the things you need? And the decide phase is like, okay, of my options, what am I going to actually execute on? Act is doing the work. And that's probably going to be an ongoing thing for a long period of time. And reflecting, did that work? How effective was that? Who should I be talking to now? Maybe let me look at my options again. New options have opened up to me, or I realize some things are bad options and I'm not going to do those things anymore. And so you're making decisions and you're refining the plan. So that's the thing about the creative engine and the creative focus workshop, is actually this structure works for literally any project you have, anything you have, or any habit you want to build for that matter. Like it's an approach to how do you make decisions about things? How do you prioritize? How do you face the grief of not doing everything you imagine in your life and like carry on and live with that? And so, if you're renovating your kitchen or you're trying to have a daily LinkedIn practice or whatever, any of those things can fit within this container. I talk about creative projects mostly because they're the ones that have no deadlines. They're the ones that have nobody asking for them but you, but they're the most important ones. But anything you want to do, like Matt was saying, like your job probably benefited from creative focus workshop work, and I've
It
heard
did.
that before.
I allowed it to suck the benefit out in a way because that way of kind of organizing projects is already useful. Uh, One tweak on this that was really helpful for me, a lot of the projects that I was, that the ambitious projects that really drove me to want to even do this. So like I want to really do these things. They're, like many people, they're crazy ambitious. They're really big. And so splitting them up into smaller like milestones that are not fake milestones, ones in which you're actually going to have a tangible output um, that represents a result of some work. That changed a lot for me because then like me listing all those kinds of things that I do in my bio. Um, then it became not like, oh, if I commit to this single project and this big monolithic, this interactive novel, and to give you some context, some of these, not the one I'm doing, hopefully, can go over 1 million words. I hope I don't end up that. I especially because I have a draft due in April. But they can be really big. But if you find a way to break it into a component that makes sense and you run it through the process, it's like you have more times at bat understanding like the compositional method of getting out of your way to do what what really matches your values. And so I can kind of beat along like I'm going to really focus on this. Like right now, I've got syllabi due for some classes, and so I'm not doing any work on the interactive novel until uh, starting at the end of next week. But instead of being like, oh no, everything's disrupted for me and my plans, in this case, the way I'm doing it that's keeping this really useful is I've kind of inserted a module, if you will, that like, okay, it's this creative act of really, creating these syllabi that are all, these are classes that I pitch because I care about them. And I'll go through the whole cycle and then I'll be done and have a chance to reflect on it, get some overall practice understanding benefit because these are at least adjacent to the creative practice, even if teaching is a little bit to the side. Um, and I'll bring that right back into the next module, which is like I've got 2 chapters I'm going to finish in by the end of February. That's the next cluster.
Awesome. Yes, thank you. All right, great. Well, thanks for being here with us today. Really appreciate you, and thanks, Shelley and Matt. And yeah, so have a great creative week, and I will see you all in the future. Bye. Thanks for joining us today for The Autonomous Creative. Our show is produced by Matt Madden, and our production coordinator is Rhiannon Sunday. Music is also by Matt Madden. I'm your host, Jessica Abel. You can find our takeaways along with any links or extras we may have mentioned, and also full transcripts in the show notes. Find everything at jessicaabel.com/acpod. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a minute to leave a rating or review on the podcast platform of your choice. Thanks so much, and we will see you next time.